Hi everybody, I'm Emily from Meeting House Farm, and this is our August plant walk. We are starting here in the herb gardens with borage. This borage just popped up, as borage is wont to do, but it has such lovely little blue flowers. They're really nice in an arrangement, or you can pop them on a salad, also really good in a cocktail. They have a cucumber flavor, and the leaves do as well. They're very spiny though, so if you can add the leaves to your salad, but you just want to chop it up really fine and you'll get this nice cucumber flavor. Just kind of a fun plant to have around. The reason we have borage on the farm though is because I plant it with our tomatoes. The scent of cucumber confuses the tomato hornworm, which if you grow tomatoes, you know a hornworm can decimate a tomato crop. So we actually companion plant these borage with our tomatoes. One thing I will say is borage tends to wander a bit, so we get borage everywhere. No problem. We just pop some in our drinks, put some in our salad, and transplant them if necessary back to the tomato bed. Let's move along and see what else is blooming. I'm going to stop right here. This is Andrographis, and while it is not blooming, I want to point it out because it's a new crop for us this year at Meeting House Farm. And whenever we bring a new plant in, we just take some time and get to know the plant. So that's what we're doing with Andrographis here. Andrographis is known as the king of the bitters, very supportive to the liver, and also often used to boost the immune system, particularly during Lyme disease treatment. So this is Andrographis growing. We started it from seed, and our farm collaborative director, Sammy, was able to get it to start. It's very difficult to actually grow from seed. So we are just getting to know this plant this year. Stay tuned. We'll learn more about it and hopefully offer it as an extract in the future. Let's see what else is blooming. Here we have our Calendula bed. Now we talked about this last month. We've been picking, and you can see we pick Calendula almost every day, and you can tell where we've picked, and you can see, I think we picked yesterday and already we have this many blooms, and we'll be picking again today. Now if you're growing Calendula, you want the variety that is very sticky, and when you're harvesting, I typically just harvest with both hands like this, and then we dry them. If you want perfect flowers, you want to dry them upside down like this on a screen. We don't usually do that because they're being used typically in a tisane, so we just put them on the screen. They dry in about 5 days in a dry room. Even just picking these 4 flowers, my hands are sticky. And they smell so good. Walking through the lavender, which has already been harvested, so lavender is ready to harvest earlier in July. I think we saw that in the July plant walk, and what we're seeing now is just a few little blooms that we're leaving for the bees. Let's see what else we have. Let's check in on the absinthe. Last time the absinthe was huge and high, and we've harvested. We harvested right as it was going to flower, so we've cut this hedge way down. You can see it looks kind of messy right now, and by the time we talk again in September, we'll have a nice silvery green hedge back in place. It takes it about 6 weeks to kind of come back there. We'll talk about the yarrow, which is right next to the absinthe. You can see some bloom. Now we did a good harvest of yarrow here for the farm, and now we're using most of this yarrow as a tea for powdery mildew. Yarrow is antifungal, particularly for plants, and powdery mildew lives in the soil. So if you have powdery mildew in your garden or on your farm, it's living in the soil, and it lives year over year. One of the best treatments I've found is to make a yarrow tea and to use yarrow as a fungicide. So we literally pick the fresh yarrow, put it in a pot on the stove, put water on it, bring it to a boil, let it cool, put it in a watering can, and pour that tea all over the ground where I have plants with powdery mildew. It takes 2 to 3 years of this constant treatment, and the yarrow gets rid of the powdery mildew. It's not an immediate fix, but it does work over time, and it's the only thing we found that works over time. That's not a chemical. Take a peek here at Echinacea. When we last visited, Echinacea was not quite ready to bloom, and right now we have Echinacea in full bloom. Now, we harvested yesterday, and so we left the plants that weren't quite fully in bloom to be harvested another day. So this plant gets harvested maybe once a week in full season, and we'll be harvesting the blooms and the leaves for the next probably 4 weeks. Once we get into September, we'll let the plant just be, and then once it dies back, we'll harvest the root in late October. The bees are really enjoying the Echinacea, and so are the butterflies. You can see our nettle. We've had a great nettle year. It's actually ready for another harvest. We should get 3 more harvests this fall, so this will be the first one. We are taping this just after August 2nd, and that's really in the old Celtic traditions, that was really the very first of the harvest festivals. And in fact, here in the Northern Hemisphere, I definitely sense a shift in the season after August 2nd. And things are ready to harvest. Plants start to die back. We start into our kind of cutting back season, and yes, that's time. So we'll get 1 harvest of nettle now, 1 in September, and possibly 1 in October based on the frost date. Let's check in with this St. John's wort here. Having any sort of St. John's wort in a patch is a bit of a trick. So St. John's wort is a plant that really wanders. Like, we'll find St. John's wort all over the farm. And what our wonderful farm manager does, Christy, she brings it back to a row so that it's easy to harvest. You can do that at any time. So whenever you find St. John's wort, if you want it in one place, you can just dig it up and move it. It does really well with that. And we have been sort of growing this row, so we're not harvesting this year. We're allowing it to bloom for the seed to drop so that we'll have more in years to come. We had a lot of farms that are in our collaborative that were offering St. John's wort, which we were really thankful for. We talked about Ella Campaign last time. She was in full bloom, and now the blooms are sort of dying back. You'll notice that we've staked the plant to hold them up because they're so big and tall, but just really statuesque. And this little bloom is turning into a bit of a fruit. So we won't harvest the fruit, but it looks like this little knobby fruit on the top, and you start to see that happening. We'll be harvesting the root of that come November. Let's stop over here and talk about astragalus for a moment. It's not a very assuming plant, but this is a 5-year astragalus plant, and we harvest after 3. The roots are used to support the immune system. It's a member of the pea family. So one time we had someone working on the farm and thought this was vetch, and she pulled all of the astragalus up, and we found them in the compost pile. So we actually had to go and dig out the astragalus roots from the compost pile, replant them, and everybody was fine. Not vetch, it's astragalus, and kind of a long growing plant, but a great one to have in your herb garden. Let's see what else we can find. This is wood betony. We're not harvesting the wood betony this year, so we're just sort of you'll see that as a theme here. Every so often we don't harvest, and we'll just let the plant go to seed, and that really increases the volume in the row. Beloved by pollinators. This one's getting sort of a little gangly. If you're growing it in your flower garden or your herb garden and it's a little more formal, you can just cut it back and it will go back to its nicely mounded habit. But these are a little exuberant, and it's the time to trim these back. Over here we have lemon balm. We've just harvested, so you can see how close to the ground we cut it. And then this was harvested probably, this was last week we harvested, and this was probably 2 weeks ago here. So this will be ready to harvest again in another week or two. Let's go see what we have up here. Here we have some late season holy basil, also known as tulsi. And this whole bed was garlic up until July 4th. And then we did a late season planting of holy basil, and it's worked really well as a succession plant to garlic. We'll be able to harvest this all the way up until frost. So I anticipate we'll be able to get a full season's harvest, even though we planted it in July. It grows pretty quickly. We also have it irrigated here. The blooms are purple and the pollinators love them, and the smell is quite delicious. One more stop here. This is Blue Vervain. And the bees obviously are really enjoying Blue Vervain. A very, very bitter plant. Not as bitter as Antigraphis, but another really bitter plant. Also supportive to the liver and a hormone balancer. Supportive to the endocrine system. We enjoy watching the bees on the flowers. It's the leaves that are used with Blue Vervain. And finally, let's go over here and see teasel. We looked at teasel last time, and this teasel is fully in bloom, and the bees are enjoying it. And you'll see how spiny and spiky it is. Now, when the teasel gets to be about this stage, you'll see that the blooms are almost done. This one's completely done. This one's got just a little bloom on top and a little bloom on bottom. The bloom on teasel starts in the middle and then expands. So this one started here and now it's expanded. And you can really see that like on this one down here. But when it gets to this stage, I cut it off, just cut it back. And actually we pull the plant, because if you leave it at this stage, you'll have teasel everywhere. But if you harvest it, then you can just, these are great in a dried flower arrangement, and they're just kind of fun to have around. So we harvest at this stage. It's no longer medicinal once it gets to bloom. So you're using the root medicinally, and you want to harvest that at the end of the first year or at the beginning of the second year. So once it gets to this point, it's no longer medicinal, but it's certainly special to have in the garden. Thanks for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you in September.